What's up, Swits? I'm Old Salty Sean, aka Dalron Telvanni, and I recently got an interesting question from one of my channel members asking what I would want to do for a dream expansion in ESO. With the year winding down as we prepare for the final adventure in the legacy of the Bretons' year-long story, I'm wondering where ESO might take us next and what features we might expect in that next expansion. Now, spoiler alert, I'm not a dev and I have no insight on what actually could be in the future, either location-wise or mechanic-wise, but let's take a moment to talk about it because it's just fun to do. First, a word of warning, this list is going to be heavily biased. I'm fully aware that there is an enormous difference between what the game actually needs and what I want. I don't think it's a big secret that Redguards and Bosmer need a lot of love right now, and I'd be just as happy to go to Hammerfell as anywhere else, but that's not going to make it onto this list. I feel like you guys definitely know where I stand on things by now, and I've come to expect it, especially considering how many of you seem to pop off whenever I mention Necrom in other videos. Lastly, I'm not going to be listing any place that I think there's a zero chance that we'll ever see. I know there's a large community of weebs who want to see Akavir someday, but I'll put out a standing wager right now that if Akavir ever shows up in earnest in ESO, I'll get a tattoo of the false gods of the Tribunal. I'm that confident that it's not happening. Alright, that's enough preamble, let's get on with the list.
Ever been to Malakoth's realm? Oh, nasty stuff. But back to the business at hand.
Some people like their fantasy games grounded in reality. We call those people cowards. I love weird shit, and it doesn't get much weirder than the Plains of Oblivion. Part of the reason that I got so excited about Fargrave when it was announced was the Plaza of Portals. While right now it looks pretty sad with just two separate gates that both lead into the Deadlands, I'm hoping beyond all hope to one day see the plaza lit up with portals of all different shapes and sizes offering transportation to each of the Daedric realms. The Daedric realms give an opportunity to the art team to make completely bizarre and fantastical locales that aren't limited by the laws of physics or reality. While it's true we've seen bits and pieces of a lot of the realms, I would love nothing more than a full questing zone version of each of the realms. And I can already hear some of you saying that it wouldn't make sense to find questing hubs in these zones since they're so naturally hostile. To which I'd like to remind you that we've already been to both Cold Harbor and the Deadlands, arguably two of the most inhospitable zones in all of Elder Scrolls, and you could even buy real estate in those zones. With that in mind, I've narrowed the list down to just a couple that I'd like to see the most. Let's start with Apocrypha, home to everyone's favorite tentacled nightmare, Hermaeus Mora. While we got a glimpse of Apocrypha in Skyrim's Dragonborn DLC, it was mostly a hazardous dungeon runs in the Black Book dungeons rather than a proper questing setting. Apocrypha is a massive library straight out of the nightmares of H.P. Lovecraft and is home to the appropriately Cthulhu-inspired seekers as well as the terrifying lurkers who haunt my every waking thought.
I hate them!
There's a lot to unpack with Apocrypha, but I did want to circle back to the idea of the Black Books. In Skyrim, the Black Book served as mini-dungeons within other dungeons. When you find a Black Book, often as a reward for completing a specific dungeon, you're transported to Apocrypha, where you must complete another dungeon to reach the book at its end. The ultimate reward for completing a Black Book is a choice between different permanent augments for your character. What I would love to see from an Apocrypha-themed expansion would be the return of Black Books, but as a new, very unique type of solo arena. It's entirely possible I've been playing too much Hades lately, but these seem like an amazing opportunity to introduce a roguelike solo arena to the game. Consider the idea of a dungeon similar to Maelstrom Arena, but at the end of each wave you're granted a Black Book reward that offers you one of 3 unique boons that affect your character for the duration of the run. As each wave gets progressively more difficult, you acquire more boons from books, which in turn makes your character much more powerful. I'm talking about stacking multiple effects on par with mythics or monster sets, very game-breaking stuff that would be really fun for score pushers to replay for various arena weapons, cosmetics, and titles. Oh, and while we're here, let's talk about player houses. I feel like a Lovecraftian tentacle manor basically sells itself.
Really? Do come in. It's lovely in the Isles right now. Perfect time for a visit.
Moving on to another familiar location that I know is a fan favorite, let's talk about the Shivering Isles.
Outside Lord Sheogorath's mercy,
Damn.
but not his justice.
What up, girl?
Then we'll settle this the old way, with
Thank
blood.
you.
Uh-oh.
I still think the Shivering Isles is the greatest expansion ever added to any mainline Elder Scrolls game, and I know that's a very common opinion. While I know that Uncle Sheo has started to grate on people's nerves as a lot of his lol-tay random humor has gotten overexposed in recent years, I still absolutely love how beautiful the Isles can be. It's not a secret that Oblivion is a pretty rough around the edges game, but both sides of the Isles, Mania and Dementia, both look absolutely stunning even in vanilla versions of Oblivion. And speaking about things that are beautiful, let's talk about potential motif pages. Madness and Amber Armor are some of my favorite sets ever added to Elder Scrolls. Madness armor, which is literally forged from the souls of dead heroes, might be my favorite set ever implemented, period. I would absolutely kill to have both of these sets implemented as motifs with full light, medium, and heavy variants for both. If the daily quest distributors were two smiths who hate each other as a callback to the original expansion, that would just be a cherry on top. Also, these wouldn't be the Isles that we know. The Isles would have to be completely redesigned from the ground up. Every era, the Daedric Prince of Order Jiggalag sweeps through the Isles and decimates them. At the end of it, Sheogorath begins picking up the pieces and remakes the realms as best as he can, meaning that the Isles would be nothing like we know them. It would be a total reinvention of something very familiar to most players. The original Shivering Isles put an enormous emphasis on choice between two different options, often manic or demented. Whatever new gameplay element would be added to this expansion, I'd love to see this return, be it either as a new way to upgrade gear or a new skilled line that would have you picking between various options. Maybe even locking your character to pick one of the two new companions or something similar, something that makes the DLC as replayable as the original expansion would be a must. You've also already got a built-in museum quest, as the original Shivering Isles introduced the Museum of Oddities, which tasked the player with scouring the Isles for all kinds of strange things to display for the residents of New Sheoth. Speaking of New Sheoth, I'd freak out just to have an apartment here, but imagine the houses. A decrepit manor for dementia, or an idyllic cabin for mania, perfect for the mad artist who partakes in green mode and Feldu. Or even a split manor, on the border between both sides, with fauna composed from both halves split down the middle like the mad god himself. And I know there's 100 people screaming at me right now that a small chunk of the Isles shows up in one of the game's major quest lines. I'm very aware. No spoilers for that one, but I'd love to see that story expanded upon in the Isles as well. Also, for the love of Azura, please bring back Wes Johnson to voice Sheogorath. He's just a gem. He's a gem of a man, and he's got to be protected at all costs.
I also do Sheogorath, Daedric Prince of Madness, and there will be consequences!
And that's really just the surface of it. I want all the Daedric realms, for real this time, not pockets in a questline, but real explorable locales. I want to see the absurd beauty of Azura's realm of Moonshadow, experience whatever the fuck is going on in Sanguine's realm of Revelry, and try to survive the nightmares of Vermina's quagmire. The Daedric realms provide so much opportunity for the story and art team to just go completely nuts, and I'm dying to see what they could do with the new and returning realms alike. But let's take a step back from the weird and let's look at more weird. You knew it was coming, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Give me the Telvanni coast. You knew it was coming when you clicked on the video, so don't come crying to me in the comments, bring on more Dunmer. There's still a lot of Dunmer content that we've never seen outside of the first Elder Scrolls game Arena. This is also the part of my video where I point out that apparently Elder Scrolls 1 was going to be a fighting game. But before we talk about what's there, let's talk about what I want mechanically from another Morrowind expansion, and that's friggin' spears. Give me fucking spears, Zos. It causes me real physical pain walking around Vardenfell and nobody has a goddamn spear. Anyway, there's 3 chief locations I want to visit here. First off, as I mentioned in my year-long adventure video, Necrom is the one that we know the most about as it showed up briefly in the old Elder Scrolls card game. It's a necropolis forged from the bones of a monster Vivek killed by essentially talking it into assisted suicide. And that's the weird-ass kinda lore Daddy likes. From what we know, it's essentially a cemetery city where Dunmer bring their dead, and it's often called the City of the Dead. For player houses, imagine a Dunmer aesthetic temple with a patio view of Red Mountain in the distance on the ocean front near the docks of Telvanni ships. Yeah, that gets me excited. Also, yeah, Queen Irene went there and stole the Indigo Tomes from the vaults of Necrom, which she did by disguising herself as a Dunmer. Which must be pretty damn good illusion magic because what the f***. Also on the list would be Firewatch, which is basically just a blank slate for whatever Zos wants to make it. The only concrete lore about it is that it's a Telvanni town on the mainland that protects the mainland from Red Mountain. And then of course we could always move down south a bit. Could go off into Tyr, the home of House Dress. Or whatever, we could go to like central Skyrim and do Whiterun or something, I don't know.
Whiterun, the pride of Skyrim. Doesn't look like much to me. Now Blacklight, on the other hand, that's a proper city.
Oh, that's right. Honorable mention goes to Blacklight, a Redoran city that will one day become the capital of Morrowind after the sacking of Mournhold in the Red Year. It's honestly some place I'm surprised that we haven't seen yet, as it's actually a pretty major city for the Pact in the current timeline. Again, it's one that we don't know very much about, outside of being very heavily Redoran based, but it should be on par with Vivek City and Mournhold in terms of size and scope, so I'd love to see it, maybe as a Q4 DLC rather than a full expansion.
Hurry, hurry, last port to subscribe until the next one.
And speaking of Morrowind nostalgia, let's talk about Solstheim. Originally appearing in the Blood Moon expansion of Morrowind before coming back in the Dragonborn DLC for Skyrim, Solstheim is another familiar zone that would look entirely different in the second era. Raven Rock hasn't been built yet, the East Empire Company hasn't moved in on the territory, so it would be largely inhabited only by the Skull who live there and all the snowy beasts that want to eat you. More important than anything, this DLC would see the return of Reeklings, and no, I'm not talking about those blue reskins for goblins, I mean real Reeklings. Bonus points if they're also riding boars. Anyway, Solstheim is a zone with rich history to draw from. Hircine runs a werewolf hunting tournament here, Miraak will eventually start causing problems here, there's a lot that you could hint at or draw from for content. As for unique gameplay ideas, there is a lot of other were creatures out there other than werewolves, and what better place to introduce a new one to the ESO player type. Valenwood has were bats, High Rock has were boars, Maik says were sharks are apparently a thing, but why not take this chance to introduce players to the local were bears of Solstheim? Player houses would be kind of a weird thing, mainly because I don't know about you, but I don't want to live here. But between all the Skull villages, dwarven ruins, and were creature hideouts, I'm sure the team could think of something cool, just not for me. Finally, I saved the most controversial pick for last, and a lot of people are going to have issues with this one. I really, really want to go to Cyrodiil. But Sean, Cyrodiil's already in the game!
You shut your mouth, trash!
This is not Cyrodiil. This is some lifeless, flat husk that calls itself Cyrodiil. And frankly, it has to be, because the Cyrodiil PvP servers choke and die the second more than 3 people are in it at any given time. While I don't think it holds a candle to Morrowind, like many of you, I think Oblivion is a fantastic game that I hold a lot of nostalgia for. And it utterly breaks my heart, because I think Cyrodiil is the ugliest, most lifeless, boring zone in the entire game, and I understand why it has to be that way, but it doesn't mean that I like it. For anybody freaking out right now, no, I don't think that we should close down Cyrodiil PvP. Cyrodiil PvP is already instanced and can stay that way. Just leave it in its own pocket dimension for all the sadists out there that enjoy that and make a separate questing zone version of Cyrodiil. Now really seems like the time to do that. All quest signs seem to be pointing towards some type of ceasefire among the alliances and a potential end to the war and storyline. And good riddance, honestly. I've always felt like the Alliance War story was just a holdover from when every MMO was competing with WoW and needed an alliance versus Horde. So it's a perfect time to revisit a Cyrodiil in the midst of reconstruction from the endless war that's been happening there. And you know what Cyrodiil produces a lot of? Battle mages. This would be the perfect opportunity to implement the much demanded dual wield of one-hander and magic that everybody has been clamoring for eons. And if you want to talk about frickin' houses, dude, I mean take your pick. ESO loves to recreate favorite houses from the main game, and Oblivion has no shortages of houses. From my personal favorite in Coral to the manor in Skingrad that came with a servant, the base game had a ton of them. Then you include the zillion and a half DLC houses that came out, such as Frostcrag Spire, the Wizard's Tower that let you summon Atronox, or Battlehorn Castle that let you stuff and mount creatures that you killed. And I would do just about anything to have a DLC dungeon that takes place in Hackdirt, that really creepy town that was crawling with weirdos who stare at you and worship the unexplained old ones under the earth. Like, what the fuck, dude? Unfortunately, I don't feel like this one will ever happen. It feels really intentional that Anvil, Leyawiin, Skingrad, and Breville were all spared from being conglomerated into the Cyrodiil PvP map. And it's likely that the 2 remaining ones on that list will one day get their own DLCs. But the real meat of Cyrodiil is currently just flat, ugly fields that feel like a complete waste of a zone that was ripe with nostalgia with interesting stories to tell there. Anyway, this video has gone on way longer than I intended for it to. I would really love to hear your ideas on where you'd like to go in ESO and what features you'd like to see added to the game. Once again, I'm not a dev, and I have no clue what's coming in the future and what's even possible, but I do just love talking about shit like this, and I love hearing your input on it too. As always, if you enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing, as it does really help out the channel a ton, or even consider becoming a member today. But until we meet again on the plains of Ardenfell, or maybe somewhere further ashore, I've been Old Salty Sean, saying smoke skooma and worship Daedra.
Stand up. There you go. You were dreaming.